that on?
It is now.
Okay. Let's talk about exposure units. I use a 3,000 watt metal halide. It's an Amerigraph. I'm not going to be standing here advocating any particular brand of equipment at this point. I like this exposure unit's light source. 3,000 watts is pretty powerful. I think you can get them up to like 5,000 watts. The light bulbs themselves are like almost $400 when you got to replace them. This one has a light integrator in it, which what that means is it reads the UVs that the lights are outputting. So once you set your time, it's measured in light units, not seconds. So as your bulb gets older, it's not going to put out as many lumens, so the exposure time is going to get longer because it's got a light meter reader or something inside of it, how it works. It's a pretty cool thing because most exposure units just have timers on them.
Mm-hmm.
So as your bulb ages, you're going to find that you're underexposing a little bit. Even if you did all your exposure calculator times, you're going to find that you're going to need, like a year later, you're going to have to add another 5 seconds or something to your exposure to get it back to where it was when your exposure unit was new. Where this one reads it for you automatically, which is kind of a cool thing. I'm sure a number of manufacturers build them like that. A single point light source is always going to be a better exposure unit. I know you were just talking that you just went over and were looking at an exposure unit with a vacuum table.
Right.
Now the one you were looking at had fluorescent bulbs in it. Okay.
I believe it did, yeah.
For that kind of money, you were talking about $1,500.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably not going to get a single light source exposure unit for that kind of dollar figure.
Right.
You know, probably around $3,000 to $5,000, you can get a decent single point light source. Now, I'm not really in a good room to give you a good example, but if I'm ever in a room talking about this and there's a bunch of fluorescent lights above, the thing about one that's got all the fluorescent bulbs in it, okay, usually they're a high output, high UV light bulb, so they're more like a fish aquarium type of light source than your basic fluorescent bulb.
Right.
However, there's a bunch of bulbs in there. Then there'll be a reflector tray, and you got light bouncing all over the place. Okay? You're not going to get as clean an edge on your image if the light's coming from a bunch of different directions, which is where a single point light source, that light is lumen this light in this direction, it's just coming from one direction, you're going to get a sharper edge on your images. I never really believed in it a ton until, because like I had an old exposure unit that I used for probably 15 years that was the fluorescent tube style. It made awesome screens, but there was a job that we did repeatedly. I specifically remember it was a Cobra print that had a big Cobra on it. It's like 5 or 6 colors, sweet print. Looked great with my wood screens and my fluorescent tubes and everything. I bought my new exposure unit. I got another order for that shortly after. And we did the screens on the new exposure unit, and literally sitting side by side, you can see the difference in the print quality. I mean, I achieved that much more. I didn't realize how much I was losing on my fluorescent tube. So I think when you're when you are making a decision to buy an exposure unit, think long and hard on it, because that's a nickel saved is not a dollar earned. It's like it's one of those pieces of equipment that is really good to put a little bit of extra money into. Okay. Because your print will never look better than your screen looks. So your screen quality is always going to be key. If you get it's crap in, crap out, I guess is probably the best way to describe it. If you get a shitty screen, your print's going to look shitty. If you get a good screen, your print's going to look good. If you get a great screen, your print's going to look great. You know, if you're pulling the squeegee the same way. So, anyways, that's my little take on exposure units. Take that for whatever it's worth.